How y'all doing? Nice. How's the new laptop? Sweet. New computers are fun. Well, it's like it. I always enjoy it, but it's also there's like the fun, but also like the awkward period where you're like transitioning everything over and certain things don't work, or like trying to. At least for me, it's always that way where it's like there's like a bumpy week, but then after that, they're just like super nice. 1.8 is it's still going to be a little while. 1.8, there's just a lot of stuff in 1.8. The whole, I mean, splitting everything out into all the different like feature sets, that was a huge chunk of it, but there's still a lot left to do for kind of asset downloads and things like that. So I'm making steady progress, but there's still, it's not going to be like 2 weeks from now or anything. So I guess depends on your definition of soon. In geological time scales, like, 100 years from now is soon. Something few people. Yeah, we do have a smaller crowd today than last week, but that's all right. It's kind of a chill week. I was actually debating whether to have coffee with Eric this week or not because I don't have anything super exciting. I know I say that every week, but uh, this is definitely just kind of like a normal work week sort of thing. Though I did just moments ago. Let's see, it should be. Yeah, I guess it's done building now. I pushed some new test builds, so if anyone wants to play with those, it's go to downloads. You'll see 1727. There's kind of a work in progress test build of 1.7.27 up there. If anyone wants to take a look. There's nothing super exciting in here. Basically, just kind of cleaning up some stuff. The one thing I mentioned last week that in 1726, which came out last week, I tweaked some code to better support keyboards on Android. Um, but as I mentioned, that's kind of tricky because it's from the coding perspective, it's not always easy to tell if something is a keyboard or a game controller or whatever. So I changed some of my logic, which I thought would make it more foolproof. But over the weekend, I got like 2 or 3 emails of people saying like, "Oh, my Bluetooth game controller stopped working on Android TV" or something like that. So for now, I have reverted that change. So keyboards are back to what they were a week ago. I have an idea for how to make them work better. Basically, in some cases, I think it will just like ask you, like, "Hey, you just pressed a button. Is that a keyboard or is it a joystick or a gamepad or whatever?" So there's probably a way to solve it, cleanly, but I'm not quite there yet. Well, hello, and hello in Mexico, and hello everywhere else. It'd be cool to see like a map of like where people are joining from. Just how to switch Google Play account. I think last I checked, if you want to switch the Google Play account, that I assume you mean like you have two different Google accounts and you want to switch between those. Is that the question? In the meantime, very cool looking. I like the whoop, nice lighting. So is this like a render in? Oh yeah, Blender render. I was gonna say, is this a render in Blender? I never noticed that rhymes before. That's fun to say. Blender render. But yeah, cool stuff. Again, I still need to play around with Blender. Like, it'd be fun to just mess around with like baking textures and things like that. Um, basically taking a render like this and like baking the shadows into textures. I mean, I know that's a very common thing in games, but it'd be fun to see how hard that is. Um, I know for like my own stuff, I always try to make everything out of clay or make it in real life. I think that's a a fun look, but like it can also be nice to just build things in 3D with Blender or whatever else, and then like bake cool lighting into it. Um, Obviously, if we were, if this was like a PC game or a console game or something, we had like high end hardware everywhere. We could, run fancy rendering with like reflections and shadows and all that cool stuff, like Unreal Engine looking stuff. Like, but basically, I'm trying to keep the game running on kind of low end Android devices and things like that. So it's like by default, we can't aim too high with like real time shadows and soft shadows and things like that. So little tricks like baking lighting into textures and stuff like that are still something that would be useful. So hey Cap, thank you. And stage for oh no. Uh, yeah, be careful with that button. I feel like I would do something like that. So a Ballistica account is well technically everyone who plays the game, like the V2 accounts, those are all Ballistica accounts. I mean, it's just like it just means you can sign in here on ballistica.net. But you can log in or sign in. I don't know how to say that, but you can sign in using your Google Play account, or you can create an account here using an email and a password. But also, if you're playing like the Android version of the game, it'll just automatically sign you in with Google Play. That's still a Ballistica account. It's still like, you can come onto this website and mess with your account even if it's just the Google Play one. Ooh, what is this? That's cool. But yeah, there's more. Like in the old version of the game, before like the Ballistica.net stuff, basically all account stuff was handled in the game. But now there's certain things where you'd need to come to this website for. I mean, you don't have to, but things like account linking and stuff like that, they go through the website. So if you go into like account settings, manage linking, like this is where you would come to like link two logins together. Uh, let's say you want to sign in with your email and password, but you also want to be able to sign in with your Google Play account. You can like link those two things here so that you can access your one account from different different methods. That's not super relevant yet. I mean, it is a little bit, but it'll become more relevant once iOS and Steam and stuff like that are finally out, because then you'll be able to like set your Steam account and your Google Play account and your Game Center account on Apple stuff to all sign into the same account. Oh, see you, Luke. No advertising in Bomb Squad? You mean no? Like, there's ads in the game. Are you not seeing them? uh, you're kind of lucky if you're not. Or do you mean there's no advertising for Bomb Squad? On that note, it's actually kind of funny. So I do have ads in the game. If you're playing on Google Play, I'm sure you've seen them. Between levels, things like that. I know they're annoying, but at least if you upgrade to Pro, it'll take most of them out. Um, so I wanted to at least have an option to take the ads out. But about like half of my revenue comes from ads, and the other half comes from like character unlocks and things like that. So it's kind of a necessary evil to pay the bills and keep working on the game. Um, but if you mean why am I not advertising the game, that's a different thing. Like I'm not actually. If you go play other games and you like watch ads, you'll never see like a Bomb Squad ad. Um, it's really interesting, but basically, there's I'm very fortunate. I get a lot of downloads for Bomb Squad, but it doesn't really make much money like per person, just because there's not a ton of unlockable things and stuff like that. So it makes enough, so I'm happy, but it doesn't make nearly enough for me to like buy ads. For it's From what I understand, it sounds like it's like a few dollars per person. Like if you want to get people to watch an ad and download your game, it winds up being like you have to spend like from like $1 to $4 per person. And it's like I don't make it anywhere near that per person that downloads the game. So it wouldn't make any sense for me to pay for ads. Um, if you never know, maybe that number will go up in the future or something like that. But for right now, yeah, I would basically just be like burning money if I were like showing Bomb Squad ads anywhere. If it's not difficult, please show the old character models. I have those somewhere. I can point to. I mean, I showed those a little bit in like a previous episode. I'd have to dig up those images again. They were basically simpler. Like the old Spaz was just, there were like fewer pieces and things. But I'll have to dig those up again. So if you want to remind me for before the next office hours or something, or Coffee with Eric, I can go see if I can track some of those down. Burp, burp, burp. So as I said, yeah, not too much of a like agenda for today. So I don't know, any topics anyone wants to cover, or any things you've been running into, problems, questions with the game, or getting started with coding or anything like that. Or I can go into some of the coding I'm doing right now. It's not especially exciting, but I'm just kind of like, I feel like I'm always kind of cleaning stuff up. That's this perpetual thing of like trying to keep the app maintainable. It's like slowly cleaning parts of it up and keeping it something that I can kind of stay sane while working on. Oh, that's okay. Yeah. Yeah. As usual, if anyone does want to talk or whatever, feel free. I will try to accept requests. I haven't regretted it too many times. There's been a few people that like talk a lot or anything like that, but that's okay. I'll cut you off if you talk too much. And another thing I've been wanting to do is show my old, or I guess they're not the old characters, but like the new characters. So I have Maya running on here. They finally updated Maya for like Apple Silicon Max, so I have Maya here, so I can have to bust out the old character models and things. Though I'm sure they've been ported to like Blender. I'm sure people have them, basically porting the Bob files or whatever, or getting that stuff viewable in Blender. Do any of you all know Blender? Like, is that I'm yeah, again, that's one of those things on my to-do list. I need to learn Blender. It'd be great. I know Maya pretty well because I worked with Maya for like a long time, like 20 years basically, or 15 years or something like that. Like we used it a lot back when I went to art school. I was studying animation, so we used Maya a lot for that, and then we used it a lot at Pixar for like visual effects and things like that. So that was like 15 years of Maya, but I have 0 years of Blender. So, but I just need to dive in and learn it. One second, I'm gonna look up. I have to do some weird little like slight hacking here to get Maya running. I gotta see if I can find that. Okay, well, I'll look for it later. Okay, so when you say can't receive Ballistica email, so it's like you have a functional email address, but it's just like when Ballistica tries to send you, or Ballistica.net tries to send you a confirmation email, like it won't go through. Is that what you're saying? Because that's. I'll have to look into that if that's the case. Do you have like a backup email or another one that it could try? I wonder if, because I'm using Amazon has a email service called like SES. Jeez, cannot type today. So I'm using this thing for the like sending out automated emails for things like that, like two-factor authentication and like account confirmation and stuff like that. So I wonder why, if this wouldn't be able to send to certain addresses. Maybe they're like flagged as untrustworthy or something, like the domains. Um, hmm. Yeah, I could look into that, but I can't like. I mean, maybe there's some way to like flag the domain as like whitelisted or something. But for now, I'd say like if you do have an alternate email address, or if you can like make a Gmail address or something like that, like give that a try, if that's at all possible. Because I'm not sure. I might not have any control over whether Amazon will agree to send you an email. Gmail about a new character, namely a cat. Yes, I do want to be adding some new characters, but that's going to be towards the end of the 1.8 development cycle. Like basically, so far I've just been working on getting the capability in there to add downloadable stuff. Um, and then yeah, once that's in, like towards the end of 1.8, then I will actually add some of those characters. So like I said, I've gotten a number of requests for things like cats and various other animals. Animals are always up there on the list. So what is this? Me at source? Do you have two different emails there? Oh, what version is Bomb Squad now? It is. You can always. I mean, the Bomb Squad version is the same as Ballistica version. Ballistica is just. It's the engine, but it's also has the same version number as Bomb Squad. It's all kind of like one and the same right now. It'll. Maybe it'll get more confusing at some point once there's like multiple apps that are built with Ballistica, but right now it's all kind of the same thing. But yeah, if you come check downloads, so as I mentioned, 1.7.27. It's not officially released yet. This is kind of like the work in progress. I'll probably release 1.7.27 in a few days or something, as long as there's no big, nothing's terribly broken. But you can get test builds here, and if you're subscribed to the Google Play Open Testing, if you can, through this link. So if you're subscribed to test builds, you'll get Google Play test builds on Android. But if you're not subscribed to the test builds, you'll still get 1.7.2.6. But there's not, as I said, there's not any huge differences. More just kind of some like under the hood cleanup. So if you take a look at this, it's all very boring technical stuff. So yeah, 1.7.19. I mean, that's a little bit out of date. There's been quite a bit of like minor changes since then. Oh yeah, actually, 1.7.20 was a huge update. So, eh. I mean, it's maybe okay to hold on to 1.7.19 for a while, just because 1.7.20 had like a ton of changes. If you're modding or things like that, like it's basically, yeah, it updated to API 8, which is all the module names changed and things like that. So it was kind of a bit of a shuffle. So if you're modder and you haven't taken the taken the plunge yet to 1.7.20, it's up to you if you want to hold off, because it's like 1.7.19 works just fine. There's no compatibility issues with, 1.7.19 can still play games on 1.7.20 servers and things like that. That's cool. Did you? I guess I love the eyes. Uh, I guess you just like edited the eye texture. That's awesome. So for the cape system, I mean, a cape system would be super cool in that case. I feel like it'd be interesting though, because the hard part with a cape system would be keeping it from intersecting. But maybe if you constantly just had it like blowing backwards away from his head or something like that slightly, just so like it looks like it's blowing in the wind. Um, yeah, I mean, part of me is it would be tempting to do this as just like a live coding demo. But there's part of me that thinks this would be super dry and boring for most people. What is this here? Oh. Well, I can talk a little bit. I went over this a bit before, like how you would get the cape working for spaz. I mean, basically, it would just like it wouldn't be copy and paste, but if I were doing that, like what I would do is basically try as a first stage, I would try to just get the spaz node to draw both a spaz and a flag. You know, so if you come into source ballistica, this would be scene v1 where all the gameplay stuff is node. So there's two nodes here. There's the flag node, which is burp, burp, burp. Bring this up. There's the flag node, and then there's the spaz node. The spaz node is kind of ridiculously long and needs to be split apart, but this is the spaz node. Whoops. So nodes are basically, if you come in and take a look at what a node is, you know, a node is they're all kind of the same thing. They all have the same base class. So this is class node is a public object, and it is actually a little bit complicated here. There's a decent amount of stuff, but they all basically implement the same thing. So there's all these like virtual methods that each node will like override. So step is like stepping the simulation. And then there's draw, I believe. Yeah, so then there's draw. This is called for the node when we're drawing a frame. So those are kind of the two important ones. So step is just basically saying like, hey, do whatever you do every step of the simulation in time. And draw is like, hey, draw yourself how you look right now. And so basically, like flag is pretty simple in that like when you come and look at like what the flag does for step, it's doing, yeah, a few like rigid body things. This is, yeah, some kind of, it's moving like it's light around, blah, blah, blah. So it's not doing ton for step, but then if you come into draw, you can see then it's basically just taking its points. Like during the step, it runs a simulation of basically, a flag is just like a grid of points, and they're connected by polygons just connect those points. So the simulation is just like simulating where those points go. And then when you come in here to draw, it's basically just taking those points and drawing polygons between all of them, you know. So it's just drawing a little sheet, and the sheet kind of gets simulated. So what I would do is I would come into like spaz node and just try to take everything in flag node and stuff it into spaz node too. So that spaz is doing basically both. So when you come down to like, whoops. So when you come down to like spaz node draw, this is where it goes through. There's a lot of stuff that it does for spaz node here. It's drawing, yeah, it's calculating a bunch of stuff like how long since we died, are we invincible, blah, blah, blah. Setting colors. Are we cursed? Do we have billboards? Oh yeah, like here is a little mini billboard. This is like when Spaz draws the little thing above him, which is, you know, shows that he has a power up or something like that. That's what this is. Little mini billboard 3. There's 3 of them. But anyway, I would come into this draw code and I would paste the draw code from the flag into here, which also means that you'd have to like paste, you know, some of these like variables and things like that from flag. But basically, I would try to do that surgery where it's just like take everything out of flag, stuff it into the spaz node, and if you can wind up with like a spaz node that also draws a flag, like that would be a good first step. So like when you create a spaz node, you see like a normal little spaz there, but then you also see like a flag, probably like at the origin or something. And so if you can get it to that point, like that's a good starting point. And then you can slowly, from there, then you'd make little changes. Like instead of drawing the flag at the origin, I'm going to always draw it like where the character is, or, you know, simulate it where the character is. And then, so then you'd have a flag like following your spaz around. Once you get that working, then, you know, you can make other little changes. Like, okay, I'm going to take the flag, instead of having it be like up and down, I'm going to like rotate it. So you'd have to do a little math, like switch the X and Z coordinates or something like that. And then at that point, you'd have like a horizontal flag, like following your spaz around. And then from there, like there's probably a few more changes you'd do. Like you'd want to maybe shrink one side of the flag. So instead of being like a square shape, it's, you know, like a cape shape. And then from there, the last thing would be like instead of the wind for the flag always pointing in one direction, you'd probably like change the wind to be based on where the character like is pointing or something, so that like the flag is always blowing backwards. Um, so I know that's like a very high level overview of what you do. Like I said, I feel like this would be kind of a long and maybe boring demo for most people trying to actually do that. Um, but that's kind of like the basic idea. I hope that helps. Sorry, I've missed like 2 pages of text here. Let me see what everyone's saying. Everyone's like, "Shut up, Eric! Stop talking about code." Bomb Squad collab with any game. That would be fun. I've had a few like indie gamers reach out to me in terms of about collab stuff, but I feel like once 1.8 is done, so we can do downloadable assets and downloadable characters and things like that. That might be something more fun, or like weird little kind of small scale collaborations, or having like limited edition characters in there or something. Like the big limitation right now is that any character I add, it's going to make the game bigger, and I want to keep the game as small as possible so people can download it easily and try it out and stuff. So once the downloads are working, that'll open up lots of problems. Um, and yeah, characters could be improved too, like higher resolution textures and more detailed meshes and better shaders and whatever. Add a separate run button for action buttons. This is a common request for, I assume you mean for the on-screen controls. And yeah, this is a very common request. So I'd like to, at some point, I keep thinking, I haven't scheduled that like on my to-do list, but at some point I would love to just kind of go to town with the on-screen controls and just like make them kind of pimp them out a lot, just add options for a dedicated run button, or add like skins, or different button shapes. Or I know people have talked about like, oh, you could just move individual buttons around or whatever and kind of customize your screen however you like. I don't know, some of that stuff could be fun. Or just making it scriptable if nothing else, just so then people could like write plugins to make a totally customized like on-screen controls. Like that would be fun. But I haven't that's not like on my schedule officially. So if anyone wants to play with that idea, talk to me. I'd be happy to kind of give you an idea of what I'm planning to do if you want to play with some of that yourself. But it's like if you play on like the desktop version, and you have a hardware controller, there are options for that. Like I believe you can turn off like any button or no, I guess always. I guess currently like holding any button will always run. So we could turn that off though. Like if people didn't like that control, just make it so there's only like dedicated run buttons, or make it an option so that if someone wants like a dedicated run button only. I don't know if that would be like unfair though. If that would, I mean, probably not. I'm trying to decide like, I don't know if it would be any more unfair than it already would be for like controller players, because they're a hardware controller is always going to work a little bit better than touchscreen controls. Right. So yeah, this happened a few weeks ago or a few months ago, when I lose track of time. But yeah, I changed the red health texture to a green health texture, um, and it's something where like I don't think it ever would have been a problem, but there were a few cases where games were like sued. I mean, I think it was like a really big game or something like that. They got sued for using the red cross texture, or the red cross symbol, which is technically like copyrighted by the International Red Cross. Um, and it mentions I think the Geneva Convention mentions you're not supposed to use the Red Cross for other purposes. I'm sure that's more like you're not supposed to use it on the battlefield to like fake, be like a fake medic, or stuff like that where it can confuse people. I personally think that like having a Red Cross in a video game representing medical stuff almost kind of helps people recognize what that means. But anyway, that's a moot point. So I changed it from red to green, just to do the right thing, I guess, or whatever. Just to avoid the slight possibility of getting a letter from a lawyer or something. I know we were mentioning at the time, like, is that going to be jarring for people, or will it just be like a weird, annoying change, but then you'll get used to it after a few weeks? So I'm curious if anyone's getting used to it, or is it still like annoying people or anything like that. Um, like if people are still like tearing their hair out about it, like months from now or something, then maybe there's something we could switch it to that's more recognizable as health. To me, it does seem weird. Like red is always life and blue is always mana. That's just like the video game rules, you know. So it's like having the red health, or red hearts. It's like it's supposed to be red, um, but it's something we could think about or change to something later. Is that a chicken? That is wonderful chicken. What is this for? It might be mods for. Yeah, there currently can't be mods for it because that's basically the on-screen controls. That is all the C++ layer. But I would love to expose it to the Python layer. Like I would love to basically re-implement what is there now with like a Python layer. Basically saying like, hey, create an on-screen button at this location. um, but in kind of a flexible way where then people could swap out the Python code and create a button here instead of here, or create a button smaller, or create four buttons, or dedicated run button. Like I feel like that would be something like super super fun. I'd be curious if people would come up with like super crazy button layouts where it's like, here's a button over here which does like a jump spin combo. I guess that could be kind of dangerous if you totally open it up. Then modders would be able to just like go to town with crazy customizations, like on-screen controls with like auto repeat. Now that I'm thinking about it, like that could be bad. I know there's some protections in there that have been added because people were using like turbo buttons on controllers just to like get advantages by like jumping super fast or things like that would like mess with the game physics. So I know there's a few things in there to try to protect against that, or like it'll knock you out if you press the button too fast or something. So I guess hopefully that stuff could that would just work with the on-screen controls. But it's something I hadn't thought of before. It's like, would that give people an unfair advantage, like having arbitrary on-screen controls? Yeah, like a bomb jump button, exactly, or something. Or if there's something that requires like really finesse timing, like do we want to allow people to make a button that does that? Like, huh. Um, and yeah, I guess technically that you can't. The Android portion is not open source now. If you were really ambitious, you could actually take the code that's available on GitHub and build your own Android version, but that would take a lot of work. Um, but I do intend to make I do intend to make the Android full version open source once stuff starts transitioning to being on online servers. That's the big thing. Is like there's so much stuff in there to kind of protect against people like messing with their local devices to like cheat in tournaments. It's like once that's no longer a problem, once tournaments are mainly running on servers and people can no longer like cheat because the score is in the memory of their own device, then that'll open up lots of stuff. Then I'll feel much more comfortable about like letting people just build their own Android versions, and like making it easier to just like mess with the code and do whatever, because it like as long as you're not messing with the code that's running on the server, which if you are doing that, then something is terribly wrong. Um, but in that case, it shouldn't matter what you do with your own local copy of the game. Like if you can hack it all to pieces, and that's fine. So in that case, I'll be much more open to releasing the Android source code and everything like that. Oh well, I'm glad I gave you a reason to learn Python. I think I think I mentioned before, but Python. I kind of learned Python myself when I started doing this kind of stuff. I don't know if it was actually when I started writing Bomb Squad was when I started learning Python, but it was all kind of the same time, and it was an excuse for me to learn some extra Python. It's funny when I look at like the really old source code and how I was doing things at first. It's just like, oh my gosh, like that is definitely not the right way to like set up like a Python API and stuff. But that's always the case. Like when you first start doing something, like the first attempt is always just really ugly. Like if you really want to see some really ugly code, like check out the source code for the remote apps. Like both of them are up on GitHub. It's fully open source, but both of them are like the first things that I ever wrote for like an iOS app or an Android app. It's just like totally hacked together. Like, oh hey, this works. Like there's no organization to them at all. They're just kind of like slapped together bits of code, but they work. Shutting down BS Life server in Bomb Squad. What is? I've heard BS Life. What is? What are they all about, or why do you want to shut them down? Okay, thanks, Aaron. I will check it out. I'll do a little best effort to see if I can find it. I know the yeah, I was querying for that. It actually made it a bit tricky, like having the special characters and stuff in it. I don't know if that like short circuited some of like the Google App Engine search functions, but there might be cases where like maybe the profile exists or maybe the global profile is there, but like I can't actually search for it because like the if there's special characters in there, Google just like their database tells me like no, it doesn't exist. Well, I'm hoping modding is getting easier on mobile. I mean the big things I've been working on is stuff like workspaces here, where you should be able to come in here and like build a workspace with nothing but a web browser, and then use that from your phone. It should sync it and whatever. So anyone who's working on mobile, just like on a tablet or something like that, like give me feedback if there's something that you really need or it's something that's very hard to do. Because again, modding is it's probably always going to be easiest from a desktop, like a PC or Linux or Mac or whatever box, but I'd love for it to work like pretty well from if someone's just got a tablet or even a phone. I know phones are not ideal because it's like such a small screen to code on, but it's better than nothing. And a lot of people probably just have phones, so I want to make it accessible there. Oh no, don't be sorry. It's like I'm happy to help look, but I just want to like temper your expectations that I might not be able to recover it if that's the case. I will try, but it's one of those things where I am 90% sure like the data is still out there, but it just might be it might be very hard to track it down. So it's like I have to kind of like limit myself like the time I'm spending on it. Um, I feel bad about that in general. Like I do get like support emails from people saying like, "Hey, I lost my account or something happened or whatever," and it's like I try to do what I can to prevent that kind of stuff from happening, but sometimes there's just cases where it does, and I'm not quite sure why, but it's like I can't track every one of those down. So it's, yeah, again, I feel a little bad sometimes, but I try to balance, making progress on the game with, trying to help people with stuff that goes wrong. But at the end of the day, like I feel like the best thing I can spend my time on is trying to make it not go wrong, or trying to make it as secure as possible, or give people ways to like back up their account, or link their account to an like a big thing now is even if you are signed in just from Google using Google Play, where it just like automatically signs you in there, I would suggest like considering just like adding an email login. So if you come into ballistica.net, I think you have to like if you go through the game, if you just have a Google Play login, you have to go through the game and do like manage account from the game, and that'll kick you over to this web view. And then if you go into account settings, there should be like if you don't have an email here, you'll see a little button like add email login, and then you can add an email and a password, and that'll let you access your same account just directly on ballistica.net, like signing in with an email and password. So I'd recommend if you have an account with lots of stuff on it and you don't want to lose it, just I'd recommend doing that as a backup, even if your Google Play login still works for you. Because I mentioned this last week. There's been weird times where like Google Play's login system, it like switches people's account IDs, and so it's for like weird technical reasons, and I'm sure they don't intend to do that. Like it's supposed to like show if they switch account IDs, they're supposed to basically like keep you logging in with the old ID, but sometimes it'll switch them anyway. It's complicated, but I think that causes people occasionally to like lose their Google Play accounts because in my server's eyes, like their account ID is different now, so it's like that's a different account. Um, so that's a bummer. But that's kind of another reason where if you're signing in with Google Play, just as kind of a backup plan, add an email password login here. You can make it a crazy password or whatever, but that way if Google Play goes haywire and it's suddenly like you're not able to log in with Google Play anymore, your email password will still work. Because I'm pretty sure that this code is bulletproof at least. 1.6, only limited logs. Is this on PC? You only got limited logs, or? Oh yeah. The log handler stuff is way improved now. So that's actually what all the, like if you come in here and let me fire up the game. So if you're signed in with your account, boink. If you sign in with your account from Ballistica.net, anyone who doesn't know this, you can come into devices. It should show anything you have that is running the game. So see if I shut this down. And this should disappear in a moment. Yeah. Launched it again. And there we go. So you can get into the console here, and this is actually connected to your game. So you should see any, if you're coding on a phone or whatever, you'll see any like debug or any print output or log output or whatever here. So this is just going to send, if I run something here, it'll actually send commands to the game. So if I do like import BABase, I'm gonna do BABase.screen message hello world. I think it'll give me a warning here about screen message, but it should work. Yeah. So see, hello world. Just ran that in the game. And then there's this little temporary warning that screen message, like the behavior has changed recently. So when you're coding like in a game context, generally you shouldn't be using screen message because it only goes to the local thing. There's this new thing, broadcast message, that'll go to like all players. So if you're writing, if you're writing a mini game and you want to say like, so-and-so scored or something happened or, 1 minute till the game ends, you should use broadcast message. So that's kind of a 1.7.20 change with all the reorganization of everything. But anyway, yeah, this is all, like this logging stuff is going through the whole like log handler thing. But you can also, there's other ways you can add callbacks and get logs other ways and things like that. So trying to make this stuff more, just kind of expandable and generalized and whatever. Like print foo. So yeah, you can see, get like, there's standard output or import logging dot debug. This is a debug log. Yeah, and so see, logging stuff will show up here in various colors and all that. So warnings should be orange. Yeah, and then critical. What did I think critical is, I think it's like purple or something. Oh yeah, purple. If you see purple, something really bad is happening. Okay, so yeah, this is the same thing. If there's an email that can't receive Ballistica email, my suggestion would be to see if you can set up another temporary email that can. I don't know what I can do to fix that. So yeah, I would try setting up another email, or I can look into it and see if there's something I can do to like unblock that if Amazon is blocking that. But Amazon SES blocked domains. Let's see if there's any info here. Amazon SES whitelist. Okay, well I'll have to look into that more. I'm not seeing anything super obvious there. BS Life Smash slow mode, right? And what? So wait, there's a server that sells VIP for player kick, like in their own server? Because I feel like I can't really like police what people do in their own server if that's what they're. I mean, I guess I could make some sort of like agreement, like you can't sell kick votes in your server or something. Is that a popular server, the BS Live server? All right, what is this? See any errors, get config, delete sys, get three. Oh, cool. Yeet sys, nice. Cool, that looks like a nice little, clean, helpful little thing. Hmm. Yeah, well, again, I would say, like, is there, like, if they're selling stuff within their own server or doing things like that, like, I feel like I can't really do too much about that. If they were, like, messing with other people's servers, um, yeah, at some point, maybe we've talked about this before. Like, it could be fun to have like a voting system or a rating system for servers or comments or something like that. If that wouldn't get too like toxic, uh, something people could like warn other people about like badly behaving servers or servers with crappy practices or whatever. Um, or you can add more features in Bomb Squad. I guess that's a request. I want to. I'm working on it. I know most of my work lately, or in recent years even, has been like on low level stuff and technical bits. But I'm hoping to at least empower people to make fun mods and add to the game themselves. And I'm hoping to make the game more easily playable online and things like that. Um, I know I've not added a ton of content or like gameplay changes myself in years, but at some point. Let's see. So, what am I? Let's see if there's anything else I've been working on that I can talk about that's interesting. Anyone else have any like code questions or things like that I could show you with how would you do this or whatever. Yeah. So this week one of the stuff I've been doing some cleanup with like babase.app. So if you don't know, babase.app it's like overall app stuff lives there. And it's actually, you can get at it from a few things. Like, so there's the BA base module or the BA base package, which has an app entry, but it's also in like BA scene v1 also has the same app entry, or BA UI v1 also has the same app entry. So if you're just coding like a window or something like that using the UI stuff, you can still get it like the .app stuff. And so that's source, assets, data, Python, BA base, app.py. So this is just like, high level stuff related to the app, and, all the plugins are listed here, the environment stuff, the overall app state of like, oh, it's running, it's waiting, waiting for the native layer to initialize or whatever. So I've been doing a bit of like kind of cleaning this part up this week for kind of technical reasons. Working on server stuff requires me to like clean up the client stuff so that they talk to each other cleanly. And like there's one thing I ran into where I'm running these like hundreds or thousands of games on the servers already, and every now and then like one of the games would just crash when it quit. So I've been like trying to track that down and fix that. So as part of that, I added like this clean like shutdown procedure. So again, not very exciting, but kind of necessary to keep the game sane. So now, like, if you come into, just gonna do make cmake, which will build the game and run it. And now I'm gonna flip an environment variable, which is ba lifecycle log equals 1. I think that's the environment variable. I always forget the names of things. But yeah, if you set that variable, see, this will tell you like what the app is doing. Like it's importing core, it's importing BAMs, running configure, it's doing on app start, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff like bootstrapping the app and stuff like that. But now when you quit it, it used to just like drop what it's doing and like exit, which is normally okay. But now it does this little proper like shutdown procedure, see? So app state shutting down at 23 seconds. And then it like waits for certain things to happen and like gracefully shuts down the connectivity and internet stuff and all that. And so that's kind of necessary because if I didn't do that, then like I said, in certain cases, if it happened to be shutting down like while the SSL library was in the middle of, you know, doing something, then it would basically crash because like something would shut down in some system, but that system was like still being in use by another thread. So anyway, kind of boring stuff like that you have to kind of take some time and clean up. How shadows work in game? So I have these kind of like simple, cheap shadows. Well, there's kind of two ways that they work actually. I wish I had a way to visualize this. Jeez. Well, do they require you to download like asset packs and things for that? Because you shouldn't be able to like currently you shouldn't be able to add like assets or textures or change things and have other people see that stuff unless they download it explicitly and like install it, which leads to another thing of like when there is downloadable assets, like how to police that. I've mentioned that before, but you know, I'll have to have some way to, you know, report if people are, you know, uploading, you know, porn asset packs or something. Oh, really? Oh, no. People are finding ways to use existing assets and make them dirty. Oh, the human mind. There's no limits. Okay, well I'll get back to the shadows in a minute, but that's a okay, that's a good feedback. So you feel like you're kind of like overwhelmed by mods and things like that in the public games? I mean that will hopefully change once the party system starts working. So my plan is basically to in version probably 1.9, but it'll probably appear before then, is to kind of like start to move the game to like a party-based system where you invite a few friends to a party, and then you hit like a play button or whatever, and it'll like match you against another group. So you know it's kind of like how a lot of competitive multiplayer games work, and all of those by default should be kind of vanilla Bomb Squad. So you'll probably have to like go somewhere special if you want to kind of get modded versions or things like that. So I do. Yeah, I think that will help, having like the default multiplayer experience be more like vanilla. Um, and yeah, making your own party is pretty much never a good idea. You know, it's like I would always suggest to use an existing server. Um, I mean, I am hosting a number of them. So if you go into the server, you know, go to the public party list, it's all the ones with like boring names, like FFA US West 2, Teams US East, blah, blah, blah. It makes me wonder, like, if there should be some icon or something, like this is vanilla or non-modded or whatever. But yeah, I would wonder if people, like, oftentimes have that same experience where, like, you just run into a bunch of, like, crazy modded servers and, like, you have no idea what's going on. Well, you can I should say hosting a dedicated server. Like you can host one if you just want to play with your friends. So if you go to, right now, private parties, host a private party, you know, pick a playlist, and then hit host, this will host that playlist on one of my servers. So, if you just want to play like the standard playlist, the standard games with your friends, just do this. And then see, now you have your own server running on one of my servers. So that should hopefully be a decent way to just play the vanilla games right now. I know it's a little confusing with all these tabs and private public parties and this and that. I mean, you should be able to do Epic here, right? Like if you do if you just come in and do like the standard playlist, default teams playlist, there's some Epic games in here, right? Yeah, Epic Race. Ta-da! So if you default teams playlist host, like, yeah, that should include Epic stuff. So, hosting, like that's literally what the public ones are doing. Like Teams US West is literally just hosting default teams playlist, as far as I know. So it should be, if you want to host a private party, that should be exactly the same. And it's usually free. Occasionally, like if you play a lot or if things are busy or a combination of the two, it'll ask you to like, throw a few tickets in. But it tries to be free a decent amount. Again, I hope this will get a lot easier when squad mode comes out, because I know like right now there's a lot of stuff going on with public, private, join a public, host a public. It's a little bit confusing in terms of like what should I do. And it's really like host a public party. That's kind of totally different than host a private party. This one basically just, whoops. Doc, come. So yeah, hosting a public party basically just says like it makes your copy of the game public and says that you're joinable from the internet if you are, which a lot of times you won't be. Like if I do checking status, yeah, I am not joinable because I haven't like forwarded the right ports or whatever. But in general, I would not, unless you have like a Ethernet connection or a good internet connection, I would not host public parties on like a phone or something. That on a phone over Wi-Fi, hosting a public party would never be a good idea. Like you would not have lag because you're running on your local device or your local machine, but anyone joining you is going to probably have a crap ton of lag. So yeah, I should put a big warning here, like don't do this. Yeah, that's another reason, like no port forwarding. That's kind of becoming a more common thing. That's another reason why I'm trying to move everything to squads mode, is so then port forwarding is not a problem because it's all running on my own servers, which are all port forwarding is all set up and stuff there. So yeah. But yeah, for now, that's I would check out, hosting private parties. That's the closest thing to what squads mode will be. It's just a little limited right now. But squads mode should be more like matchmaking and stuff like that, to where even if you're just playing by yourself and you want to play a team game or something, you'll just poke like play or match me or whatever, and then it'll like put you on a team against some other team. So I think that'll be a lot more fun, because then it's more, instead of just like jumping into the middle of a game that's in progress, it'll be more just like play this one match with these people, and then you can do it again if you liked it. So it'll be more like the competitive part of it will be better. And everyone, it's not like one person will be playing on the server, so it's not going to have like, you shouldn't have like one person with a big advantage, hopefully. There's always going to be, people with better lags than other people and stuff like that, but it won't be as big of an advantage as it is right now if you host your own server. But yeah, that is in general, that's kind of an interesting question, is like how to have the game balance like modded stuff with vanilla stuff. Because I think like for new people, if new people come in and they just see a bunch of modded stuff, which is very confusing and advanced, and there's a lot going on, they might be like, what? And then just like leave and never come back. So it does make me wonder, like, what is the best way to expose that? Like obviously I want people to be able to write wacky mods, and there might be groups of people that like those particular types of mods and things, but I just don't want to like scare away new people who have no idea what to expect. So it's like give people like an easy introduction to like mods and things. that'll be kind of a challenge with the whole squads mode, is like how to expose, once modded squads mode becomes a thing, like how to expose people to modded stuff in like a good way. And yeah, it's epic mode. I mean, some people don't like epic mode, but it is easy to play just because it kind of takes lag out of the equation, and it, slows everything down, so it's not as crazy. So I wrote that originally just because it was funny. It's just like having epic music and putting things in slow motion just makes it kind of like stupid and dramatic. But it is kind of a nice, almost like training mode. Hmm. The latest server. So the latest servers are 1720, whatever we're on now. What are we on? 1727. Are you seeing lag issues with those? Because there were some lag issues with like 1720 and maybe like 1721 maybe. Like some of the ones one there was the huge code changes in 1.7.20, and so like a few versions after that there were some lag issues that I had to sort out. So it should be better at this point, but if you're still seeing lag issues with servers that are running 1727, or if you're hosting a server with 1727 or 1726 or anything like that, please let me know. But yeah, so, I mean, server mods could come into play too. Like if the servers are doing a ton of like complicated things that can pause the computations or whatever, or cause lag themselves. Like that's always an option too. The air horn sound, like that's one of the included sound effects, I believe. Like, is the air horn, like, is that used? Oh, like for like scoring in hockey, or um, I assume that's the sound you were talking about, like when you score in. Yeah, I think it's just hockey, right? Like football has more like the standard like cheer and bell sound, right? I think hockey just has the air horn. So if you want to use the air horn, burr, 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 burr. My suggestion would just be to like dive into hockey. So just I would go to like source, Badata, Python. Hockey lives under, so BAC and V1 is all the existing gameplay. BAC and V1 lib is everything that uses that existing gameplay. So that includes like all the game types and everything like that. So that would be BAC and V1 lib, game, hockey. So just dive into this, and then I would just look for like sound. Cheer sound, chant sound, there it is, foghorn sound. So yeah, you can see, just if you have gameplay code, just do bs.getSound foghorn. And then when you want to play it, it's just that sound.play. I mean, 1.7, it shouldn't be more heavy than earlier versions. It's still basically the same set of files and things like that. It shouldn't be like more bandwidth. That being said, the game it uses too much bandwidth. Still, that's a big thing that I hope to improve with Scene V2, kind of the upcoming version of the gameplay stuff. Is that, yeah, if you have a ton of people connecting to your game, and you're hosting a server, like you're probably going to wind up, you know, either having to limit like how much you're serving, or getting charged for bandwidth or something like that. That is still my biggest cost for all my server stuff, is just bandwidth, because the stupid Scene V1, it's sending all these like transform matrices and floating point values and things that it probably doesn't need to be sending. So Scene V2 will cut down on that, hopefully measurably, to where it'll be a lot cheaper bandwidth wise to host servers. CPU of Amazon EC 800 plus and 1.7 script. What? So what are you saying here? There's like a modded version of 1.7 that has. I mean, there are a lot of files here. If basically Python scripts and things like that. Like lots of very small files. So I guess maybe that has probably grown a bit since 1.6. But the overall, I mean, the overall size hasn't grown too much. It's more just like that code is being split out into different small files. But like the overall, you know, if you come down here, like the compressed archive of the game, including all those, you know, thousands of files or whatever, it's still, in the smallest form, it's about 47 megs, so it's pretty small still. There's some that are bigger, like Android. This Android APK is bigger, largely because it has like 4 different binaries in it. So on Android, Android can run on 32-bit ARM, 64-bit ARM, 32-bit, you know, x86, and 64-bit x86, which means if you have a single like APK file that will run anywhere, it has to have like all 4 of those binaries in there. So like four different compiled builds of the game. So that's why the Android APK is 80 megs by default when, you know, like the single build for Linux is 47. Mac is a little bit bigger. Oh yeah, the Mac build here, it has ARM64 and x86 64. That's the 2 kind of supported architectures on Macs at the moment. And then Windows is actually only 32-bit Intel or 32-bit x86. I could have done 64, but it seems like there's still a few people out there that only have 32-bit and it works everywhere, so I left it on that. But the reason it's bigger is because it includes like all of Python as well, and I think several other things that maybe don't have to be included in these others. Well, though there's something different because the Mac version also includes all of Python. But I think the Windows version maybe includes, I think on the Mac version, it's like a stripped down Python. And on the Windows version, I was just like, screw it. And I left like all of Python in there. So it technically has maybe some more features than like the Mac version. If you try to use like obscure Python things that you really would never need to use in the game, the Windows version might work where the Mac version doesn't. So, but yeah, so anyway, sorry, a random tangent on sizes there. It's interesting though, like if you look at the servers here, the server is basically the game minus like the graphical assets, because it's, you know, it needs all the like the collision meshes and the scripts and all that stuff to actually be able to like host the full game. It just doesn't need like the textures and the models to like display it. So you can see like that makes such a big difference. Like a single Linux server is like 6 megs. So here again, the Windows server, it's because it's bundling like all of Python and maybe some other stuff. So the server is 37 megs in that case. I'm not sure what's going on with Raspberry Pi there, like, because that's basically Linux. So for some reason it's 15 megs instead of 6 though. I'd have to look into that. Maybe it's like being built with like debugging info included or something weird like that. But yeah. Can I build Bomb Squad Windows Bomb Squad on Windows? Yes, you can. So if you want to do that, I would go to the Ballistica wiki. It covers it a little bit in native layer overview, I believe, which you can get to from getting started. But native layer overview, this talks about like if you want to build like the C++ part yourself. By default, if you go to like getting started, this sets you up to basically just do the Python layer. So if you download the GitHub repo, or if you clone the GitHub repo and then like run through these steps, you'll be able to basically assemble the game. Like, you know, it'll stick the Python scripts where they need to go and download assets and like give you a running copy of the game. But if you want to take that further, if you go into native layer overview, this will tell you how to actually like compile some of the game, like the C++ layer. And so by default for like Linux, it uses CMake. For Windows, it goes through Visual Studio. So this kind of talks about a little bit how to do it, like what you need. Yeah. So I would say, yeah, take a look through this code, see if you can, you know, get that working. But if that's the case, you should be able to compile the Windows version just the same as the Linux version. The only part that you can't compile is the BA+. So this is like the one little feature set in the game. So the one little kind of chunk of precompiled stuff. And that's because it's like sensitive things. It's like server stuff or account stuff that, you know, I kind of don't, I want to discourage people from messing with that. So that's why I'm shipping that part as precompiled. But everything else, so all the other feature sets, including all the graphics engine and audio engine and everything else, you should be able to compile that if you have Visual Studio uh, community, or either one should work, community or professional or whatever it's called. So yeah, give that a try. Let me know if you run into any problems. Some people have had luck with it, some haven't. So if there's anything I can improve, I'll try. Yeah, that's a good idea. Like adding an FPS feature for just in general to be able to kind of render at different frame rates. I'll have to look. I'll have to see how hard. Unfortunately, this is kind of like a per platform thing because the different platforms work in different ways. Like if the CMake build, like if you just go and compile the game yourself, like if I go to, let me just pull the latest stuff. This be a little like test to make sure things are still working. Okay. Make CMake. All right. So this is what the CMake build looks like. It just builds on the command line and then it should run it. But what the CMake build does is it sets up a little like loop, and so it explicitly like runs 60 frames per second, which is stupid because monitors these days are often running at different rates, so it's dumb to have it like locked at 60. But that's totally different than like the Android version is set up to where like Android itself controls that. It basically Android tells the game like, hey, render a frame, and so that means the game will render whatever Android is running. So like 120 hertz will give you the 120 hertz in the game, or whatever. But yeah, if it does slow down, that's a bummer. I'm wondering like how easy that would be. Maybe there's a way to tell Android like, hey, I only want 60 hertz or things like that. I feel like phones often probably have those controls. I mean, you might be able to do it that way. Like you might be able to say like, hey, don't run games at 120, or run this particular game only at 60 or whatever. So that might be something you could look into, but if it's something that I can add on the code side, like somewhat easily, I could try to do that too. Um, yeah, I mean, I'd like to expose that to Python. Like I said, the tricky part is that like there's different systems though. As I was mentioning, like CMake, it's a totally different way of like timing the frames versus Android. Like on CMake, basically it runs a loop. It's basically saying like, okay, draw a frame, wait 1/60th of a second, draw another frame, wait 1/60th of a second. I mean that's oversimplified, but it's kind of like the code is running this loop itself. Whereas on Android, it's basically saying like, hey Android, tell me when I should draw a frame, and then it just goes. So it's like it's kind of two different rate management systems. So it's not like, I mean, maybe it would be possible for me to write like some abstraction of like a max frame rate that would work in both cases. Maybe I should try to do that, but it'd be kind of a little bit tricky. So it's not like there's not an easy thing that would work in both cases. Oh yeah, this is probably kind of, if it runs at 144 then drops to 60, like what might be happening is what happens with phones a lot is they'll run really fast, but then as are running for a while, like they'll heat up, and so then like the phone will like slow things down, so they'll throttle performance a bit. So which is a bummer because then the ideal might be to just, if it was running at 60 the whole time, the phone would probably stay cool enough to keep that up. But the phone's just like, yeah, I got this. I'm gonna run 150 frames a second or something, and then like 1 minute later, it's like so. But yeah, I should look into that, or that could be something else. Like that's another reason I'd like to expose the Android layer at some point when it's safe, just to give people an opportunity to kind of mess with stuff like that themselves. Yeah, I think something like that would make sense. I mean, if the device runs at 120, yeah, having it do like 60 could be good. 60 or 30 or 90 or whatever. There's probably like reasonable values. Um, but yeah, again, it's like I just need to look in to see like there might be some function that I can call, just like telling Android like, hey, just send me half the frames you normally would, or I want to run at 30 frames per second. Please call me that much, or whatever. Um, for the other one, like on CMake builds or the other builds like that, where like we control the loop, like that's easier to do. We can basically just, because right now we're saying like draw a frame and then sleep for 1/60th of a second, then draw a frame, then sleep. We can just like change the time we're sleeping. So it can be like, draw a frame, now sleep for 1/30th of a second, and then draw a frame, etc., etc. So in some ways there's like more control, but it's it's good or bad thing. Sometimes it's nice to like let the operating system handle that, because then the OS can do stuff like give you controls over, like in your system settings you can have controls there, and that will just like work in the game. If the game is controlling all that stuff, then sometimes it's harder to interact with system stuff. So yeah, it's all these different considerations. But yeah, I would like to, like, especially just in the CMake case, it would be good to have like a control for that, like instead of having it hard coded at 60, just be able to like set your own frame rate. But ideally in that case it should like follow the monitor too, which that brings in other options. Like there's what's called vertical syncing. You probably see that like VSync in lots of games, where basically what that means is the game like draws a frame and then it waits for your monitor to like be ready to refresh, and then like that frame gets submitted to the screen or whatever. So then theoretically, it draws like one frame for every frame your monitor is showing, so it's like this perfect sync up. The downside with that is that if the game is rendering kind of slowly, like once the game gets done with a frame and then it has to wait like a 60th of a second until the monitor is ready, like that can slow the game down even more. So if your game drops below 60 hertz, like if your monitor is showing like 60 frames per second and your game is like not quite able to keep up, that means like it'll basically drop immediately down to like 30 or something like that. So that can be bad too. It can just like give you extra lag. I know for me, like when I'm playing a game and it has like a VSync option, I usually turn that off just because I prefer to have the game more like responsive or less laggy. I don't really care if it's like perfectly synced to the monitor. What do you guys do in that? Like, do you have VSync options in other games you play, and do you turn those off, or what do you all do like for PC gamers? Okay, yeah, I think I was looking at this API. Multiple refresh rates. I mean, that probably would be the ideal. Basically just telling Android like, hey, just start refreshing at 60 hertz or start refreshing at 30 or whatever, as opposed to something like skipping frames or I don't know, like, because if Android tells you to, you know, draw a frame once every 60th of a second, but Android itself is drawing 120, like it's probably being wasteful there. It's like redrawing your frame twice. So that, yeah, this something like this is probably the ideal, is like if you can just tell Android like, hey, Android, draw 30 frames per second. But yeah, that's another good point too, is like if you are having oh, hey Amir, love you too. Have a good week. If you are running into cases where like the game is throttling after a while or slowing down, yeah, maybe just try like tweaking some of your settings. You know, turn resolution down just a little bit or something. That might let the game like stay at 120 or something for longer. Um, but yeah, this would be good to look into, like this frame rate stuff, multiple refresh rate. I'll have to see. I mean, that's the one slightly bad thing, is like this Android 11 only, or they added it in Android 11, so it would probably have to be a thing where like it does something different for Android 10 and earlier than it does for Android 11, which is always a bummer because there's so many people out there running old versions of Android. Um, so it's still almost like I want to have something that works for people on older phones too, but it's always cool to, it's good that this tech is in there. Huh. Yeah, so for right now, like I'm taking the approach of just asking Android as little as possible. Basically, it's just saying like, "Hey, I'm drawing in OpenGL. Just let me know when to draw." And so Android is just kind of doing the default thing, which is whatever the phone is doing by default. Um, so that's kind of the risk too, is like when we do add more options like this, like if we're asking Android specific things, there's always like worries that Android's going to mess up or do something not optimal or something. So I guess we'd want to like make it an option or something. Just have like refresh rate like default by default, and then maybe you could select it if it's supported. Yeah, I do agree. Like this would be nice. Yeah, on mobile and stuff. If you want to play for like a long, significant length of time, just for like preserving battery and stuff like that. Like, so I should start thinking of like some sort of settings that could be useful everywhere, or just see how hard this would be to get in there. Or like a set of settings that could apply to the Android version, but that could also maybe apply in a similar way to like the CMake version or the PC or Mac versions. Um, yeah, it's I do need to revisit that. this this would be like this brings up another topic. Like I don't actually know if there are mods out there that like lag the game significantly. Like theoretically, if you're running a lot of Python code that is doing a lot of like let's say bot logic, or if it's making network requests in the middle of the gameplay logic or things like that could actually add delays. If the game can't like send out the game state until some logic runs, and that logic is going to take like a tenth of a second to like ping a server or something, like that's bad. That just means like it's going to start delaying packets going out, and that's not good. So theoretically, Python code can slow a server down. I feel like that is much more like based on what that code is doing though, and not like how many lines of code it is, because that's something I've found over time is that you can have a ton of code, but something getting slowed down, or speed of code is more about like hotspots. It's more like there's always like one place where it's spending way too much time doing something, and that's way more about like some particular code doing a bad thing than it is about like the total amount of code. So I wouldn't, I guess you could say that, yeah, if you have more lines of code, there's more likely to be places like that, but I don't think it's not like a linear relationship. It's not like more lines of code means your mod will always be slower. Um, but yeah, I'd like to get more. I'm hoping to. I mean, I've been working a lot on like adding logging and things like that lately, and I'm still working on that stuff. I'd like to get more logging in there too, so people would know, if the game is spending more than like a few milliseconds in like the logic code, like it should tell you. It'd be like, hey, you just you ran something in Python that took like 10 milliseconds. That's bad. Because it can be hard to tell if you're just writing code that runs on a server. Like you won't necessarily see that lag on the client because the client will like slow down to compensate. So it can be difficult to tell if you're actually like doing something that is like slowing the server down. But yeah, some sort of. I mean, I've sort of done that kind of casually myself. Like that's kind of why I made like stress test mode, is just to kind of like run games with a bunch of stuff going on, like 8 characters pressing random buttons, and just making sure that it doesn't like hitch and pause. Uh, so stuff like that can be useful if you want to run that with your own mods or things, just to if you have crazy stuff going on, or if you're hosting a server, like if you can host the server like in GUI mode, if you can run on like a PC or a graphical Linux box or something, and like actually watch the server, you can actually it'd be kind of a janky way to do it, but you could actually see if it was lagging then, because you're seeing exactly what is happening. So if you have like some network call that takes a quarter of a second, like you'll see the game like pause for a quarter of a second. But yeah, I'd like to start to get more of this stuff to be automated. Just stuff to kind of warn people if you're writing Python code that is wasting time. Um, and some of that'll go away too. Like again, like hopefully Scene V2 or Scene V3 or something will have client prediction, to where that'll allow clients to like not feel that sort of lag as much. Like they'll still be able to basically accept input and like show you what your character will be doing, even if it hasn't technically done that on the server yet. Like that'll help kind of hide hitches and hide problems like that. So, yeah, that's true. I mean, stress test will show you things like logic that is running locally if that logic takes too long, but it won't necessarily show you things that like stress the network too much. Um, that's another thing too. Like if you do a bunch of commands that like say generate a sparkle or something like that, and then you decide to like run 1,000 of those because it looks really cool. Like there's certain cases where that's gonna like send out a ton of network data because like each one of those sparkles is like a little network message basically, or a little bit of a message that has to be sent over the network. So if you do 1,000 of them, even though it looks cool, like you're probably sending out, like a megabyte of events or something like that, um, and that can wreak havoc on the network. So that would be another thing that would be at some point it would be good to have like a graph or something like that to be able to see like to make it easier for server modders to kind of like see what kind of data your server is dealing with. Yeah, this is we've talked about this before, and it's still like it'll be remains to be seen like how it'll work. But my basic idea is that we'll have some sort of like moderation system, like maybe like a whitelist sort of thing, um, where in order for a mod to be usable by anybody who like just joins the game, like it would have to get approved by a moderator or something like that. Um, Largely, yeah, to filter out stuff like NSFW stuff or like copyrighted stuff. Again, I don't want to get like calls from lawyers. So yeah, we'll have to figure something out. I definitely want to like tread carefully though, because this will be a very powerful thing where you'll be able to just yeah easily share cool stuff you make, but it also means people can easily share bad stuff they make. But yeah, that's my thought is some sort of like moderation system. And even the stuff that's been approved, like let's say someone accidentally approves something without fully looking at it, there'll be some sort of like report this button. I think that's required in a lot of cases. I think Google actually requires if you have user generated content, like you have to have a clear button next to it for like reporting it. So there'll be something like that. So again, I don't know, it'll be a journey of exploration to see how that all works. But I also, as part of that, I mean, I kind of want to. This goes back to the earlier comment about, like if you just jump in and you see servers full of mods and things like that. I kind of want to avoid that too much, or like have new people kind of have a curated experience, or have like the vanilla version of the game for a while. And so I kind of want to have a bit of control over like what mods are accessible to people at first, or kind of like put them in a place, maybe like the crazy mods that like totally turn everything upside down. Like maybe those would be either labeled as such or in like a section or something, just like complete total mods, or like total conversion mods or wacky mods or something like that. So any ideas you have on like games that do that sort of thing well or something, I'm open to ideas. And some of that will be, I do want to kind of keep it secure in terms of like the mod downloads will go through my servers, and will have to be kind of verified just also for bandwidth reasons and stuff too. I want to make sure that someone doesn't like post something that goes viral and then like, suddenly there's 10 million people downloading giant assets from my servers that are, causing me to spend $1 bajillion in bandwidth costs or something. So I definitely want to keep controls over like who can access what and how much of it and all that. Because servers are expensive, it turns out. Again, a lot of that is my fault, like the bandwidth costs. It is really interesting, like when you're learning to program, or you're learning like network programming, it's just like, oh, okay, and then I can send these 8 bytes over the network to like share this floating point value or whatever. It's like cool, I can send all this data, it's really cheap, whatever. But then like when you write a server out of it and you put it up on like an AWS machine, it's like suddenly like those little design decisions of like, oh, I'm just gonna send this 8 bytes. It's like that maps directly to like what you pay for that machine. So it's kind of weird, these little kind of technical decisions. It's like if I had sent 4 bytes for all of those, that would be like half the bandwidth and half the server cost. So it's like suddenly this stuff becomes like very real numbers. So I'm definitely thinking about that more now than I was when I wrote it. Oh, what's this question here? Bomb Squad World Champions. I would, or championships. I would love that. I would, this brings up another question though. Is, I mean, there would probably have to be like regional championships or something like that, unless if we get to the point where lag is dealt with like super awesomely. We're not at that point, but like if we could get to that point where people could play across oceans and feel like it was fair from a lag perspective, like that would be cool. But for right now, I feel like you'd have to have it limited to like the different leagues and like North America, South America, the continents at least, or regions like that, in order for it to be like. How does it work in other games? Are there other games that like literally have world championships that are like played online, or do games usually is it, I don't know, like Overwatch or something like that? I don't know, competitive played games, or like LOL, like is that, are there like worldwide championships, or is that like divided more so into regions? Do you guys know? I mean, it'd be super cool to like get to the point where there was actually like a championship where people like got together and played it. Like that's kind of like I mentioned before. That's kind of like my somewhat of my dream right now is to get the game to that point where people would actually come to like watch people play some sort of championship like in person. Like how cool would that be? Like we're living in Santa Monica right now in Southern California, and uh, so there's like Riot is actually not too far from here, and they have, you can buy tickets and go watch people play like LOL championships and stuff like that there or whatever. So it's kind of cool. It's like technically like just down the road, literally. But anyway, yeah. I mean that's a big inspiration for me, is like wanting to have like fun competitive stuff with the game. So all this like the squads mode stuff that I'm working towards, like all that is in service of that goal. Just trying to get it to a point where people can just hop on, invite a few friends, and then play against the world. And that could turn into like tournaments and championships and stuff like that. So bye, Mr. Mushroom, if you're still here. Oh, I guess he's not. Oh, geez, I wasn't even scrolled down to the bottom. What's going to be the future like features in 2024? We haven't had Roadmap Seagull. I guess we're missing some of our normal crowd here. Usually Roadmap Seagull makes an appearance, but I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. Is I'll expect button transparency. Well, I'll cover this one first, and then I'll back up to the. Oh, there we go. Okay, Roadmap Seagull. Button transparency. I mean, that wouldn't be too hard to add. Like, I would almost put that in a category of like if someone wants to add that. I mean, it would be a little bit tricky. You have to kind of like understand the graphics engine just a bit. But if you want to come in and just like modify the button so that you can do that, it probably wouldn't be that much work. So that would be just to show where that would be. It would be Source, Ballistica. So the UI stuff has been split out into its own feature set. So that's UI v1. Widget. These are all the little things that make up the UI. Button widget. So you would just come in here and we'd probably just have to add like a, so button widget.h. We'd have to just come down here and add just like a transparency value. I mean, here's stuff like, the color of the button, color red, green, blue, blah, blah, blah. So we just add like there is opacity. Does that not work? I don't remember. Or does that not work in certain cases? Maybe it already works in some weird case, but maybe it just needs to be fixed. Aha, okay, so I guess we support non-1 opacity in certain cases. We currently only support non 1.0 opacity values when using custom textures and no custom opaque mesh. So maybe this is something that, if you can work with this, maybe that's something that would work for your case. But it could be expanded to support transparency in more ways also. But yeah, this is the code that you would mess with if you wanted to add like transparency support for buttons more so. But yeah, it looks like there might just be limitations. So I mean, you might even be able to just pass, or well, when using custom textures and no custom opaque mesh. Okay, yeah, I'd have to look into it to see like what you could do with that right now. But there's some way, yeah, if you just pass a custom texture, you should be able to do at least something. Ooh, I found a camel case bit of code here. I need to fix this. I mostly for the C++ layer, I've tried to adopt, it's on the wiki, but I've tried to adopt, like, I think there's like the Google C++ coding style guide. So I've tried to stick to that. So originally it was all camel case, which is like this. And there's still a few, but now it's more like, underscores, snake case, as it calls. But there's a few things lurking there that are still camel case. So I try to slowly hunt them down. So let's do draw. All right. Another one bites the dust. But yeah, joystick and action buttons. So you're talking about for the on-screen controls then. I mean, that would be... That stuff does not go through the widget system. That is like its own separate thing. Where does that stuff live? I am trying to remember. That might be in like base graphics. Yeah, you'd have to poke through and just see where it is that it draws like the on-screen controls, and then go in there and mess with that stuff. I haven't actually been on that code for a while. I'm like slightly blanking on where that lives. Not the renderer. Maybe it's UI? Or input. Actually, it might be input. I think it's like a weird thing. Like UI is anything related to Windows and widgets and stuff like that. Input is everything related to event like controllers and anything that's controlling the game. And so even though this is like a graphical thing, I think it might live under input, which is a little bit weird. Let's see, is there some drawing? Oh, here we go. Draw touch input. Oh, okay, so it's part of the touch input stuff. So touch input. So yeah, if we go to let's get base input device touch input. This thing has some logic for drawing itself. Touch input draw. Oops. Yeah, if you come take a look at this, so touch input draw. This is where it's actually doing the magic. There's just these little draw commands like C translate, draw mesh, image 1 by 1, which is just like a square. So adding transparency here would probably just be like finding the right places and just adding a like set transparent or set opacity or whatever the command is. Shouldn't be too hard. Most of the work here would be like wiring that up to like a control. So there's already controls for like position and scale. So let's look for that. Like SC2, what is SC2? SC move, what is SC move? Oh yeah, so you can see here like it finds scales for like base control scale times like the movement control scale times 200 times random fudge factors. So you would just do something here. It would be like float SC opacity equals base blah blah blah. Basically you would do the same thing, get a value in the same way. It would just be like an opacity control instead of a scale control, and then you'd want to like wire up controls in the UI to edit those values and stuff. So it'd largely be like kind of a copy paste thing if you just wanted to like take control scales and make a control opacity equivalent. Sorry for the tag, but will there be an easier process for making a server? Lots of questions, by the way. After, um, I mean, again, like my answer for this one is again like squads mode. I mean, making a server, like I still expect there'll be people making servers just because you can like customize your server to do whatever crazy stuff you want. At some point, like I want to support mods for squads mode, which means like when you're playing squads mode, like on my servers, you'll still be able to like use mods. Let's say you want to play a crazy modded game with friends or something like that. Once it's safe for me to run mods on my servers, which is a whole process, like that'll be a possible thing. So in the future, I would say if you want to write mods and like enjoy them with other people, like just doing it through squads mode will be the simplest way. Um, and you should never have to, pay for. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll have like some limit or something where it's like you can. Yeah, yeah. I probably wouldn't even have a limit. It's just like I'm hoping to have squads mode pay for itself. We'll see if that happens, but yeah, I don't plan to like charge people to play squads mode or anything like that. It's just as long as there's enough, yeah, things people can unlock in the game to where like I can make enough money to support those servers. Like that'll hopefully be good. Um, but yeah, that's basically my answer. Is just wait for squads mode to support it. I mean, yeah, right now it's tricky. Like if you're running a full time server on AWS or something, like it probably will cost money just because of the bandwidth usage and things. Um, there's like the free tier, so if you run a server that's like small enough, it's possible probably for it to be free. Or if you have a good internet connection, you can just run a server on that. But yeah, it's not an especially simple process. I mean, it's not terribly complicated. Just download the server binary and run it and forward the port to your device. But it's still like, yeah, it could be easier. So yeah, in the future, I mean, for right now, there's like the closest thing to it is what I was showing earlier, where it's private hosting. Just come into the game, gather, host a private party, pick a playlist, hit host, and now you have a code you can share with your friends to play with them. Um, but yeah, once you get into like modded servers and things like that, then it's kind of like there's not a super simple way at the moment. Got scammed by someone for asking me to send them their instance. What do you mean by their instance? Did you send them like info about like your EC2 stuff or? Is there like let me know if there's any vulnerability in the game itself or something. Yeah, I'm trying to. I mean, up until recently, the game had like a telnet option, where you could like telnet into your server and run telnet commands, which is basically just like a unsecure shell access. So I heard reports of people getting kind of hacked that way or something. They'd be running a server and they had like the telnet access on, and then someone would like telnet in and like own their machine or something like that. So that's off now, or that's gone. So it's always it's tricky to balance fun features with security. But yeah, it would be weird. I don't know if I'm curious what you mean by sending them my instance. Like if someone was just like using your EC2 machine or what? But in general, with going back to button transparency, like I do want to improve the UI system at some point, but that's another one of those things where it's not really like a high priority thing. Like probably after 2.0. Um, but for now, I'll just try to like muddle through with what's there. Oh, so someone got your IP address from. Hmm. So you were like hosting on your own device, and then they figured out your IP address from that, or you're hosting on your computer or something. I mean, to a degree, that's to a degree like if you're hosting a game on your computer and then you're sending out or people are joining that, like at some point, like it's impossible to hide your IP address because their computer is literally just needs that to talk to yours. Okay, I'll get caught up with my DMs after as soon as I'm done here. I'll be wrapping up soon. It's almost 2 hours, but I never want to like check DMs while I'm on here for obvious reasons. I don't want to like edit the video afterwards and blur things out. I'm far too lazy to do that. I'm not lazy, but I just need to get back to coding. But yeah, you always got to be careful with IP addresses, like showing that and stuff. Especially if you're screencasting or something like that. So if anyone sees any like vulnerability where like, oh, the game is showing my IP address to somebody, or it's making it possible for them to hack me without me doing anything, like definitely let me know if there's things we can improve there. I worry about little things too, like now that the game is having stuff like, for instance, this. If you come to gather or not gather, sorry, come to here and do manage account. Oh wow, application can't be opened. Okay, I need to look into that. I don't know what just happened there, but that's supposed to. Oh, that's weird. There, it worked. But yeah, like the manage account button basically like opens up a link that will give access to your account. Um, but originally, like most links, when it opens up, it has like a QR code that you can use, like if you want to access that link on like your phone or something. But for manage account, I decided that's probably not a good idea because if you hit manage account and then it shows a QR code, then anyone watching a stream could like do that quicker than you, and then suddenly they're signed in as you. So that seems like, ooh, maybe not a good idea. Even this, it's like it might, you might see that URL pop up. Probably this machine will be the first one to use it, and then it won't work for anyone else. So it should be safe, but still, it's like weird little security things you got to think about. So yeesh. Well, anyway, all you server hosting people, be safe out there. That's that'll be fun. Or it's a little scary, but also will be fun. Moving more stuff to my servers, like the squads mode stuff, is just trying to keep people from abusing that. Or I always mention like people mining Bitcoin on my servers and stuff. Want to try to keep that from happening. So we'll see how that goes. So, well, anyway, it looks getting close to 2 hours, so I will wrap up here in a few minutes. Anyone have any last topics, comments, thoughts, complaints, professions? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, well, technically, when the game was new, it was local multiplayer only, and then the networking stuff got added in version 1.4, I think. So for a while, it was like co-op only, or local multiplayer. But then, oh yeah, like co-op got added, I think in like 1.2 or 1.3. So initially, it was basically like teams and free for all only, and only with local players. So because I initially made the game to like play with friends and family and stuff like that, so it was all about just multiplayer. So that was like the biggest review complaint when I first released it on like the Mac App Store back in the day. Everyone's like, "Why is there no single player stuff?" So then I finally added that stuff, and then in 1.4 I finally added networking stuff. But the net play always has felt kind of like tacked on. So that's the big thing with squads mode, is that hopefully finally the network play will feel kind of like a first class citizen. Better camera for small screen when? Hopefully, I can wrap that in as. I mean, I see that as like part of squads mode, just like making online play better. So hopefully for like Scene V2 or one of these upcoming changes. Um, So yeah. So lots to do. So on that note, I guess I will get back to work on doing that stuff. So anyone who tries the new build, let me know if you run into any problems with it or anything. I'll probably release the full one within a day or two. Cousin, I see you lurking here. Huckleberry. I was in San Francisco over the weekend. We went and saw the sea lions. I thought of you. So I almost messaged you a picture, but I think I did that last time, so I don't want to get like tired of sea lion photos. All right, well, everyone, have a good day. So I will see all of you next week. Never get tired of sea lions. That could be my title for this episode. That works. So, all right, well, peace out, everyone. See you all next week. Bye-bye.